Welcome to Behind the Buzzwords with Tracy Eames, Arielle Morton, and Yanta Haynes, where we expand on marketing terms, tactics, and strategies in a more digestible way for entrepreneurs and business owners. Our goal is to debunk the marketing myths, remove scary barriers, and have a damn good time doing it. So take a seat and buckle up because you're in for a fun ride.
Hey y'all, welcome back to Behind the Buzzwords. I am here with Arielle and Yanta. I am Tracy, and we are excited to talk to you today about marketing strategy, everybody's favorite topic, or nobody's but mine. But we're going to talk about marketing strategy because I love talking about it, and Arielle and Yanta are totally giving me a little bit of leeway today. So how y'all doing today?
We're doing good.
Amazing day today. Amazing.
We have been joking about our favorite topics to talk about, and you all have been hearing them. And this is one of my favorite topics to talk about. I have a few other topics that I like, but marketing strategy. I think it is, I will say, the most skipped thing in the world. And it would be the thing that makes people's life a lot better and a lot easier. So today we're going to talk about why you need a strategy, what the heck we mean when we say strategy, and just generally like kind of how we think about it, right? Because this isn't about overcomplicating it. It's not about, making you spend all your time making a boring presentation. None of that is true. It's just about like, do I have a plan, right? Or am I just out there doing lots of stuff and seeing what sticks? So that's at least how I think about strategy. I think about it as, do I have a plan of attack where I know what I'm trying to accomplish, who I'm trying to reach, what I'm trying to reach them with, and then some general like metrics that I'm going to track so that I know if I'm actually doing what I said I'm going to do, right? Because for me, if I don't have that, then it's really hard for me to understand like, is what I'm doing working, right? Without the like, who am I talking to? What am I saying? How am I saying it to them? Where am I saying it to them? And how I'm tracking that? It's just a really basic framework to make sure I'm not wasting a lot of time and energy, and also I'm reaching who I want to reach and how I want to reach them. And yeah, so that's kind of how like I think about it in like super simple terms. Arielle, how do you think about marketing strategy?
I actually think about it in a very similar way. The overall goal, it's kind of like the cheat sheet, your blueprint. It's your guide. You even if you feel like you like if you wake up one morning, you're like, what am I doing? It's like that is going to tell you exactly what you're going to do. And a lot of the times in general in business, whether you're an entrepreneur or you have a Fortune 500 company, sometimes you forget the end goal. But if you have that in place, you can always quickly reroute and make sure that you're on task. And also when you're handing things over, this is like golden for someone that needs to take this on, rather it's a marketing assistant, a copywriter, whoever you have on your team. Like this is so golden for them to be able to follow. So me, when I think about strategy, I definitely think about for certain, what are you talking about? Like, I start with the brand. Like, who are you and what are you relaying? Like, what's that transformation that you're providing to your folks? Yep. Who are the folks that you're talking to? How are you delivering that message? And in what way are you tracking it? Like, literally head on everything that you just said. And what's really important is tracking along the way so that you can see what works. And the biggest thing is doing it long enough. Yeah. Some people do it for a week and they're like, well, this doesn't work. I'm going to go and try what I saw that person over there doing. And it's like, wait a minute, pump your brakes. Let's actually track this a little bit longer than a week so we can see what's actually effective and helpful. And I think that I 100% agree that a lot of people skip this and they don't understand what's happening, or they're always back at the drawing board and they don't understand why. And it's because they didn't start with the strategy in mind.
Love that.
What about you, Yanta?
Yeah, I don't even know if I need to even talk because y'all hit it right on the head. And I am a strategist, so I love strategy. I said buzzword earlier because you hit it, blueprint. Like this is your blueprint, this is your game plan, this is a game changer. All those things of just simple, keeping it simple, as Tracy like to go to, is having a plan. It don't have to be no exaggerated plan. It's just having a simple plan to get you from point A to point B to point C. But the most important things inside this plan is being able to identify the gaps. If you never have a strategy plan, you're never able to identify the gaps of where you need to either add something or take something away, what's working and what's not working, and the tracking. You don't know if how are you going to get to your final destination if you don't know how you're tracking to get to your final destination. And a lot of times that happens in marketing. And you hit it on the hair area when you said they do it for a short period of time.
Yeah.
Because marketing seems so overbearing sometimes, overwhelming, time consuming. Buzzword, content is king. The
Yeah.
proper content is king. The right content is king. The right time
Yes.
to deliver the content is king. Just content is not king. If your content's boring, no one wants to see it. No one wants to read it. It cannot be king. It really cannot. It cannot help you get to the objective that you want to. That's why the strategy plan comes into place. When you have that plan of what you're trying to deliver to your customer, how you're trying to deliver it to your customer, how you're tracking it for your customer, then you can actually say, is this content working or is this content not? And if it's not, how do we course correct?
Yep.
Everything in life is about course correcting. How do we course correct? So Tracy, how do you course correct when your content's not working or
Yeah.
or your organizations are not hitting the nail on the head?
Well, I think about it depending on the channel, right? And so, I mean, I think that, one of the things that everybody's like, well, what's the amount of time? And it's like, well, it kind of depends on what you're doing, right? SEO, super long time to see an effect, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're not seeing anything happen on your SEO optimization until like a year out. And like,
Yep.
that can seem frustrating, but like, that's just the way it works, folks, right? So, like, pick a cadence, whether that's like once a week or twice a week, you're writing a blog, you're building your SEO. And then over time, then you can start, once you get a few months under your belt, you can start to think about, okay, what am I seeing in trends? Or certain topics or certain days of the week, you can start to get some nuggets out of it, but you're not going to know kind of overall if you're on the right track for a while, because it just takes time to build that algorithm. Other things can be shorter time. And that's why I sort of say to people, like, okay, what are you trying to get to? And I think this is where I think about strategy, and I think about, you guys have both touched on it. It's not about what somebody else is doing, right? So a tactic is not a strategy. I'm going to go live on Facebook for a week is not a strategy. I'm going to write 5 blogs on LinkedIn, not a strategy. I'm going to do a webinar on a topic, not a strategy. A strategy is really the comprehensive look at what am I doing and why am I doing it versus scrambling to do a bunch of tactics, right? So like the way I kind of think about it in my world is sports. And I think about, okay, I can go out and I can run 4 days a week and I can do sprints. If I'm trying to run a marathon, that's the worst idea ever, right? Because I probably should throw in some long range runs. I should probably throw in some rest days. I should probably do some weight training. Now, if I'm like trying to run a sprint, 100-meter, which I would never do because I'm not very fast, I'm not going to only run 10-mile runs, right? I'm going to run some short stuff. I'm going to do some hill workouts to get that explosive speed. Anyway, this is not a marathon training podcast. I realize I'm getting on a tangent. The point is everything has a different purpose. So like Arielle said, like, where do you want to get to? Like, what's the destination? And then back it up and start to think about, the funnel. And that's where I always start, is the funnel. And people are like, oh, the funnel's dead. The funnel's not dead. The funnel is just basically a way for you to think about, who am I trying to reach at each stage, right? So a long time ago, this was called the 5 A's. People now call it, the funnel conversion. But their general kind of perspective that I take is, people first need to be aware of you, right? Like, they need to know you exist in the world. And so there's certain things that you're going to do to like show them that you're aware. And there's a certain way you're going to track that success, right? And so that's kind of first. Like, how do I get people to know you? And I think we talked about this on the last podcast. This is like, Yanta, your example of like, hey, if somebody just like knocks on your door, you're going to talk to them differently, right? You don't know them yet. So like, who am I introducing myself? And then you want to get them to consider you, right? So you're going to talk to them a little bit different. Once you know them a little bit, they know you a little bit. And then you want them to buy. And that's a little bit of a different tone, right? Because you know each other better. So you can like, you're not just like starting off with like a marriage proposal of like, hey, you want to buy my stuff? You like, first you have to like make them aware, get them to consider. And then if they buy, you want to figure out if they're going to buy again or they're going to recommend you. And the reason I say to people to start with that funnel as like their strategy is like, okay, yes, our goal is to get them to buy something and to hopefully recommend us. Along that journey, we're going to speak to them differently. We also might use different platforms, right? So like, and I know this is a really long tangent, Yanta, but like I say it because your goals for your awareness are going to be very different than your goals for your conversion, and what you do about them is going to be different, right? So if you're like, hey, I'm just doing this podcast because I want people to be aware of me. Great. Then you can count things like listeners. You can count things like, okay, how many of those people actually come to my website after they listen to a podcast, right? You're probably not going to measure the success of your podcast on purchases because, like, it's all about the top of the funnel. Like, you're just trying to get them in. You're trying to get them introduced to the brand. So if people are coming in and they're like coming to your brand, great, awesome. They might not be dropping all the way down. Okay, like we don't have to have that this week, right? But then if you have a specific thing like an email campaign that's dropping in once people have like subscribed and they've opened up your emails and that email isn't converting, right? Then your metric on that piece of the puzzle is like, did they buy? Well, that's how you're going to judge it, right? You're going to judge it on like, okay, did they buy from this email? And so again, I think it's just like knowing what your strategy is and knowing how you're using each of the tools. Not every tool is meant for every stage of the funnel, and not every stage of the funnel is going to be measured the same way. And I know this all sounds super overwhelming to people, but it actually is pretty easy once you like map it out. So I guess maybe Arielle, could you give us an example of like how you think about one tool and how you think about like measuring that one tool?
I'm gonna go with email. Is that what you mean? Like
That
a tool
I
like
had a
that?
feeling you were going to go email, but I didn't want to be like, hey, tell us about email.
I'm gonna go with email, and email is I'm just gonna have to plug it. It's the biggest asset in your business, in any business. I don't care if you're a solopreneur or if you're the largest corporation in the world. Email is going to be your greatest asset. Its ratio is usually between 34 to 42 ROI on each dollar you put in, and so it's really awesome. But it's not what we're here about. That's not what we're talking about right now. But when it comes to email and you're putting out an email, the way that you would associate that, it can be several different ways. So I'm just going to piggyback off of what Tracy said. So let's say you have a podcast, your call to action is to get on your email list. They get on your email list and you have that welcome email. And so it's a sequence. Let's call it a sequence. So it's a series of emails. So it's like, hey, welcome. So glad you decided to join me on this little part of this, this part of the internet where I hang out. Here's the things that I'll talk about. And here's what you'll get from me. Like, that's just like kind of, that one generic, here's how often you'll hear from me, that first email. The second email will look like, okay, talking to them a little bit more about you and like your purpose, how why you're here, what's your end goal. And then let's say, for instance, you want to tack on like some type of sale or something. So then we're going to throw in a testimonial from someone on how you help them, and how you serve them. And then, maybe the fourth one will be a sale. So when you're tracking that and you're looking alongside that and people are dropping in, you're noticing like, okay, my open rate dropped here. So maybe it was your email, your subject line. It wasn't necessarily the words in the email, it was the subject line. Or if you go a little deeper and you go into the email itself and it's like, okay, I noticed that it, the click-through rate is down. So maybe it was the language in the email. Maybe it wasn't convincing enough, or maybe it wasn't conversational enough.
I just want to stop you there, Arielle. Can you just like say a little bit more about that? Because I think you just dropped like a huge gem, which is if they're not opening it, that's
Yes.
probably your headline because that's the only information they've seen, right? Whereas if they've
Absolutely.
opened it and not clicked, it's probably the body of your email because they made it past reading the subject line. They opened it. Mm-hmm. And now they're in the email and they haven't clicked. So like something there might be. So can you talk a little bit? Like, I just love that. And I wanted to pause there because I think people are like, okay, so it dropped. How do I know what to do about it? Like, you're looking at the information that they would have seen at that next point. Is that like the way you think about it?
Yes. So like when, as we mentioned, tracking is really important. And so when you see your open rates dropping, it could very well be other things, but the majority of it is the language that you're using in that headline or that subject line is what we'll call it. And so you want to spend a lot of time making sure that you're putting in a lot of effort into what your subject line is going to be. And so I like to do my subject line at the end. A lot of people like to do it at the beginning. And the reason why I like to do it at the end is because I've already written that full story. And so I know exactly what I want to pull from it. And so now I can create that eye-catching subject line. And you got to know your people again, like going back, we're always going to fall back to that same thing. You really got to know who you're talking to. And so that low open rate is going to be a huge, significant eye-opener for you to be like, okay, something about my subject lines aren't working out. So let me kind of go back to the drawing board and figure out how I can make this stronger or how I can make this connect more. Because could also be that you're not showing up consistently and they don't know who the hell you are. But in the case that you are showing up consistently, they do know who you are. Subject line is a big, huge thing. And then when you go in and you're thinking about, okay, why didn't they click this link? It could be like, again, it could have a lot to do with the information in there. Like, do you have too many links? Do you have not a strong enough story, a compelling story that's in there? Are you off topic from that subject line? Because clickbait is not, we don't do that here. Like, talk about what you're talking about in your email. Do not put no bogus information in your subject line just to get an open rate, because all you're going to do is lose them
No
in the text of the
catfish.
email. Like, we don't do that around here, okay? Like, be honest, and which is another reason why I write my email, my subject line after I've written my full email and what it's going to be. So yeah, these are really big things that you want to take into consideration and you want to pay attention to. And that's every single email. So I mentioned it would be a sequence of 4 emails. You got to do that for all of them. You got to track that for all of them. And most email service providers, which is like your MailChimp is a really common one that I'm not favorable to, but it's common. And then there's MailerLite and there's ActiveCampaign. And so I know there's even other all-in-ones that they have, like Kajabi and things like that, that have the email service provider attached. But this will show you that open rate percentage that we're talking about. This will show you that click rate or that click through rate that we're talking about. Like, these are the things that are there, and it'll show you the percentages on, you know, what's helpful and what's not. And then biggest question I know I'm going to get next from a lot of people probably in the comments are, what's the best open rate? And so what I genuinely like to say is, you know, try to stay above 20-25%. And I would even sometimes go higher. And the reason being is because right now the iOS update has that automatic open. So it's not even a real open. It's just telling you that it automatically opened. So I always like account for a handful of folks not really opening it and it just getting that iOS update automatic open. Big programs like ActiveCampaign has adopted this new feature where it tells you. It's really robust. It's expensive. So on the other ones, I'm not gonna say regular, on the other ones you don't have that feature yet, but I'm sure it's coming in some point. And so I always like to say between 25-30 is a great open rate, so that you can make sure that, okay, this I know, like, that's a decent rate when people are opening, and I'm staying consistent and keeping doing that as well. And so I'm gonna be honest, Tracy, what was the question?
No, that was perfect. You answered exactly how
Okay.
I think, like, because I think it's important for folks to hear about how do you evaluate it, right? I think that was Yanta's first question, right? Like, there's so many pieces of the puzzle and they can be evaluated differently. Yeah. And what I love hearing you talk about is evaluating the thing that people are seeing. Because I think people are like, oh, well, this email didn't work. Let me change everything at one time. And it's like, well, don't do that, because then you don't know what's going to be driving it. But I liked your approach of like, okay, well, if I'm thinking about email, I'm thinking about, okay, open rate, that's the headline. You know, and I don't do a lot of these things, but like, I'm just thinking like Facebook ads, right? You might be thinking something different, right? When you're evaluating a Facebook ad, you might be like, okay, was the image right? Maybe I want to test the image the next time I run this and see if a different image, and I'm not going to change anything else, right? Because when you're testing something, remember, you only test one thing at a time. But then you start to learn, and like you start to get some data about, okay, well, then I changed what I named the button, right? Like, people are like, oh, why would I care about that? And it's like, well, you might get a different result if you say sign up now versus pay. But test it, right? Like, that's how you learn. And I think for me, that's my thing I love the most about marketing is you're going to probably learn some things you didn't expect to learn if you do a lot of this like A/B testing over time in all of your different channels. Yeah. So, but Yanta, how do you think about
Buzzword.
Yeah. A/B
No,
testing.
it's perfect, because I was going to actually touch on what you just touched on, Tracy. You touched on SEO, which is search engine optimization, and it's exactly what it says. You're optimizing the search engine performance, and a lot of folks forget about the optimizing part of it and think that you can just find some keywords, put it out there, and all of a sudden people are going to find you. I just wanted to touch on that and make sure they're very clear on that. Optimization is called optimization because you're doing all the things, and it comes down to testing. That's the only way you can optimize something is by testing something. And I just wanted to bring that up, what you said earlier, so they could know it's the testing. You can make a big change in 30 days in your SEO, but once you make that big change in 30 days, now you have to slowly make the changes, because only reason you can see change in 30 days is because you were screwed up in the beginning anyway. So the little things that you change were big things for you. And now you're back on a good algorithm. And now you need to stay consistent with delivering the message to your people. And I wanted to hit that because I didn't want them to lose that part of why SEO is so important. And then email marketing, it's one of my favorites, and you know that, Arielle. Email marketing is one of my favorites because I think it's one of my favorites because when a person actually opens your email and reads your email, they're saying that they have a little like for you. And everybody wants to be liked. Everybody wants to know that I have something interesting for you to say. And to be able to have that inbox communication, I think is very personable. You're actually being invited into their home, their space, and they want to give you their time to read. So, don't do all the work, as in what I received from you, Arielle. Don't do all the work and not do the testing to see if the people really want to
Mm-hmm.
hear what you got to say.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot
Mm-hmm.
of work doing email marketing. It's a lot of work of putting an email together. Sometimes you can take hours, sometimes it can come out in 10 minutes. However, it's no reason to do all that work if you never get your emails open or they don't do the action that you want them to do. That's the reason for your emails. So
Yep.
keep focusing up front that the end goal of this action is for them to take action on whatever I ask them to take action on.
Yeah.
Even if that's just liking a post or actually giving you feedback. I love feedback. Even if you want them to give you feedback, something in your email needs to make them want to give you feedback. So what I'm going to touch on that you was going towards, Tracy, is ads. This is one of my biggest things is Facebook ads. We have came to this world in this model day age that anyone can do advertising.
Mm-hmm.
Advertising is a feasible thing, but a very expensive habit. And I'm gonna say that again. It's a feasible thing, but a very expensive habit, especially if you do not have the strategy that Tracy's talking about, the plan in place, and knowing what you're tracking. And I'm going to touch on a couple of things when it comes to ads because that's a whole different, a longer talk than this. So I can't tell you which directions to go, how the directions to go. Why? Because ads about a testing. And ads about before you start an ad, it's about what you said in the beginning, Tracy. What are you trying to do with this ad? Are you trying to get awareness? Are you trying to bring in leads? Are you trying to get a reach? What are you trying to test?
Yeah.
And when you test small. You can test with $1, you can test with $5, but you're testing. If you get people to purchase in your testing, does not mean your ad is working. It just means some people are quick action takers and they will
Mm-hmm.
buy anything. And some people who will buy anything on the internet, no matter what it is. So you continue to test until you actually do it, and you test it piece by piece. Like you said, Tracy, you test the visual. Is the visual working? Are people clicking because this visual is working? After you get past the visual, is my headliner working? Is the content boring? Or is it pulling them in to take the next action, which is what's the next action? Give me the money, which is what Arielle's talking about. Give me your email address. Give me the money. That's my give me the money stage. When a person gives you the email address, that's them giving you their money because they're saying that I'm okay with you taking my name and my information and selling all the crap that you have in your ideas in your mind to me. And I might buy one piece of your thing and I might love it because the truth of the matter is, don't nobody know your. Can I cuss? Yes. Don't nobody know your is good but you. And only way they know it's good is when they actually make that purchase. And you have to have those multiple mediums for purchase. Email marketing, and especially if you're doing ads to make it not an expensive habit, is to test, 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 test. How often are you testing for ads, Yanta? All the time. And and when that ad is doing great, you still test on it. You don't change things dramatically on it. You tweak things
Yeah.
that works on it until you get the best ROI for that ad that you want to do. And then you continue to use that ad as a prototype for your other ads. But you have to test. And so no one can tell you how much money is for an ad because truth of the matter is I might pay uh $2 and something for an ad spend, and that might be really good for me because I might be making $1,000 or $2,000 off the product they buying. You might be paying $2 and something for the ad, and your product's $32. That's not a good ad spend. So, like, you have to know your matrix and what your product is, what the service you're delivering, and how you're breaking it down to say what at this point of time in these and I test for 3 days. So in these 3 days, what am I looking for? And then I move to another. What am I looking for to continue to optimize that ad and make it better? So if you have not heard anything that we've said today, it's testing, 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 and knowing your metrics of what you're tracking.
Yeah.
It's very important when it comes to any strategy and any plan that you have.
So I was going to say, I know we're going to close it out because we're coming to the end, but I really want Tracy to give like a quick scenario on what a strategy can look like for a very simple, basic product. If you have one off the top of your head, if not, I got to shoot some at you.
Yeah, no, I love this. And I was going to say the same thing in terms of like, one thing I just want to say, which I hope you're hearing, and Yanta just said it, which is your marketing is not anybody else's marketing, right? I think this happens. We see it a lot at Teams & Co. actually when we work with teams about culture, right? People are like, oh, somebody has a ping pong table, I should get a ping pong table. And I find the same thing in marketing, like, somebody's on YouTube, I should be on YouTube, right? And
yes,
and your audience is your audience, and your goals are your goals. And so I think hopefully what you're hearing all of us say is figure out what you want to achieve, figure out who you want to work with, and then have a plan to speak to them in a way that's compelling, right? And that's going to determine channels and those sorts of things. So I would sort of say, first thing I always do is figure out who your ICA is, right? Your ideal client avatar. And I know this is going to sound really, really basic, but call them. Pick 5 people you know in your life who fit the general persona of this avatar that you want to reach and say, hey, how do you learn about this type of thing in your life, right? That's your awareness, right? So if they're like, hey, I learn about things like this on podcasts, great. I'm writing that down. Then you say, okay, well, what usually triggers you to like want to learn more about something? Like what features are you looking for? Like what is interesting to you? And how do you like learn about that? Is that like, do you like to get emails about things? Do you like, like you're just going to start to ask them questions about each stage of the process and then say, okay, well, what's your buzzword here? What's your purchase driver, right? Like what makes you buy something, right? And people might be like, oh, like if I get an email about it and then I see it on Facebook for like 7 years and I'm like, fine, I'll buy it. I get it. They might not say that. They might say something else, right? They might say, I really love testimonials, like what Arielle talked about. And then you're like, okay, I got to put a testimonial in. And so I would say there's not like a general strategy, but I would say first and foremost, call your customers, like call those ideal clients and just ask them how they learn about stuff and ask them what makes them want to buy something. And you'll start to figure out those couple of places that you need to be. And the reason I say that is because like I don't also want to say, oh, just go on Instagram, right? Because I think a lot of people lose faith in marketing because they're trying to do the next cool thing versus trying to just authentically speak to their customer. So I know it's really boring and that's probably not the answer that you wanted, Arielle, but like I would just
no, it is. It is like I just wanted people to get it because marketing strategy is going to be a buzzword for them, and so I want them to know that it's not this thing that's so far away or so robust. It's very basic things like who are you talking to, what are they like, where are they, and what do they want, what is in demand that they need. Like that's kind of basically what your strategy is, and it's worked out in a way where it's not just I'm going to go live on Facebook 5 times this week and that's going to be the strategy for the year. And it's like no.
But I do want to bring up something you said that was very important, Tracy, and I think they need to know this. So what we are also saying is it's about a research and development. Tracy, that's what she was saying at the last minute, it's about research and development. What we will do to help you with this plan, even though it sounds like we talked about a plan, but we didn't give you plan steps. What is very important in having a plan step is not doing everything that everybody's doing. However, find 3 major people in the industry that you want that's doing it really well. And if they're doing it really, really well, you deconstruct what they're doing very well and you reconstruct it for yourself. You might see things in all 3 different people that you see. One person might do something really good at this that this other person's not doing. And you can take those pieces on that feels comfortable and it relates to you in your life and you can do it in your lifestyle and you add those pieces into your plan of action. And those are a good starter to get you there because they're doing it really well and they're getting the results that they want. sometimes we get lost, like you said, Tracy, on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook, seeing a bunch of people doing it really bad that looks like it's doing it really well, because you don't know the outside of what they're doing to do it. They're just doing a whole bunch of stuff and not having that plan. And so you have historical companies to see that's done it really well. Apple does it really well. If you're a person who wants to touch someone's emotion, Apple hits the emotion very well, and they never show that product in the ads. They just talk to you. And so you have Coca-Cola. When Coca-Cola came out with their ads and wanted to bring it into family, what they did very well is they personalized their bottles. They made it very personal. So everybody, even if you didn't drink Coke, you was looking for a bottle with your name on it. And so they got people who don't drink something, buy something, because they made it personalized. So I just wanted to make sure that they knew we are giving you a plan and we're giving you a strategy, but it's really about research and development and deconstructing what you see in the industry that's done really well and make it your own.
Yeah, and for everybody out there, we're gonna wrap up this episode, but ask your questions, right? Leave them in the comments, message us. We would love to hear them. While you're there, you can obviously like and subscribe to the podcast, give us a rating, tell us what you think about all of this. But that's why we're doing this. We're doing this to help you answer questions. So if you've got questions, you're like, hey, I have 9 new questions about marketing strategy. Great. Send them in. We will answer them in one of the next podcasts. Thanks, Arielle. Thanks, Yanta. Good to see you all this week.
Thanks, Tracy.
You too, Tracy.
Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you found something new that was helpful. And if not, I hope you had a good laugh with us. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already done so. The views expressed by the guests are their own and may not reflect the views of Behind the Buzzwords or the co-host. Mentions of particular books, digital tools, or strategies or participation of guests does not imply endorsement by Behind the Buzzwords or the co-host. This information provided is meant for educational and entertainment purposes and should not be taken as professional advice.